A season of protest has begun. At the same time as a homeless family were forced to sleep in a Garda station in Tala, housing activists are occupying an empty building in Summerhill. This is the beginning of a nationwide movement of protests. We spoke to some of the activists about their actions and their demands.
Conor, can you just tell me first a little bit about what has happened here in the last few days?
Yeah, so the action here has involved a group of kind of local grassroots housing activists from across the city. So we started at 6:30 on two nights ago at the GPO, and we started with the usual kind of protests, speakers, that kind of thing, and it all looked very formulaic. But there was an energy there, and we had plans for what we wanted to do with that energy. So we took people on a bit of a march. We marched up O'Connell Street, and the property here, as I'm sure it's been outlined already, we've been looking at for a couple of months. It's been vacant. It's owned by a pretty well-known landlord, a slumlord locally. So we marched on the property and we marched down the middle of the road, and this march is unlike anything I've ever been on before. There's a real sense of kind of, I guess, potentiality and power, the power that we had when we were together. There's maybe 200 of us. We took the road the whole way down, and there's a sense of that we really were taking back the city. So when we got here, the building, we've been watching it for a couple of months, and we got into the building. There's a group of 5 people bravely got in first, and there's a further group of maybe 15 or 20 of us in there. Once we were in there, we had an immediate demand that we wanted to make, and that was that the buildings here, there's a road, be compulsory purchased ordered by the city council, by the state, and that it be put to community use for housing immediately. So this, we feel, is a very reasonable demand to be making when there's housing lists that last for 10-15 years across the city. And a community have got behind us ever since. So we had rallies outside once we'd taken the property. We had we had maybe 50 people that stayed all night outside the property, keeping watch on us inside. And inside, the morale is really high. We got to work immediately. We divided up into teams. We got onto local community groups, political parties, trade unions, and the support kind of flooded in from there. And ever since, the place is an absolute tip. When we got in, there's mould everywhere. It's just a totally dilapidated building, but we've managed to restore electricity, we've managed to restore water, and we've turned it into a working space. Imagine what the city council could do if they compulsory purchased this place and did it up properly and accommodated people there in public housing.
And can I just ask you, what are the plans for the future now?
What are the plans for the future? Well, there's been a tremendous outpouring of kind of support, so we want that support to go somewhere, and we hope that other groups around the city and around the country take inspiration from this and put similar plans into action. Ramp up the pressure, light a fire under Leo's arse, take other properties, take actions of civil disobedience, and start building networks as well. Networks are important. There's a march on October 2nd that's organised by the National Coalition on Housing and Homelessness, and it would be great. I can't think of any action that would be better than that, to build the pressure on the government to take action. They're worried about their support base. I think there's a broad support for this action from all layers of Irish society, working class and society. So really, get involved with local groups, come out on any marches that are called, get involved in the National Day of Action on August 25th, and take buildings if you have the capacity to do that. Follow in our footsteps.
And Aisling, can I just ask you, you're a student in Trinity College, and why did you think it was important to come down and support this occupation and take part in the occupation here?
Well, I was involved in the Take Back Trinity movement, and as a part of that, we've kind of linked ourselves with grassroots housing activism since the start of the summer. And I think it's really important to link student activism and the struggles of young people with the housing crisis, because even though students are often painted as an outside body to the working class, the reality is there are a lot of working class students, and the amount of students who have to work to actually fund their college degrees is raising every year. And if you look at the state of accommodation in the city, most Trinity students have to pay incredible amounts of money to stay in the proximity of the college. So as a student, it directly affects me. It affects the whole student body, especially working class students, and we need to stand up for those people.
Peter, can you tell me first a little bit about the buildings here behind us and what's happened here in the last few days?
Basically these buildings, back in March, they're basically owned by a big sort of slumlord, eventually a guy called PJ, with 2 brothers, Pat and PJ O'Donnell. They rented it out to 120 Brazilians back for the last number of years and stuff, and they were renting rooms for up to €450 each, well, per tenant actually, per apartment. So basically it was pulling about €10,000 a month off these people. They had no proper contracts or leases. A lot of stuff was cash in hand, which again is totally preposterous and extortionate. And again, it was five properties that he was extorting this much rent from very vulnerable migrants. So again, they were trying to hit with illegal eviction notices back in March. Local activists got involved and supported them. And since then, the Dublin Fire Brigade were called in and obviously closed down the properties because they were obviously vastly overcrowded. There was up to 30 people living in some of these homes, 6 to 8 in each room. Bunk beds. It was just horrific conditions for people to live in. And I can't emphasise enough how much extortionate rents he was ripping people off with,
And just tell me in the last few days and what is happening here behind us.
Yeah, well, as I said, man, we're in the middle of a massive housing crisis. There's over 35,000 vacant houses in Dublin. And for instance, these are vacant now since March, and there's 10,000 people in emergency accommodation, up to 4,000 children in emergency accommodation. Last night we saw the horrific pictures of the children sleeping on a Garda station in Tallaght, and yet you have houses empty in the city. It's actually an outright shame. It's absolutely disgusting. But apart from that, it's just a consequence of a series of political decisions that has led to this. And we're actually what the occupants now are asking for, and the activists are looking for, is the council to come in and compulsory purchase these properties and provide homes for people in the community